The report concluded that she violated the Federal Records Act by not turning over all official emails before she left office. The report also found that there was no evidence she had requested or received approval to use her personal account for official business. Clinton all along has maintained the use of her server was allowed.
My personal email use was fully above board. It was allowed by the State Department, as they have confirmed.
What I did was allowed by the State Department, but it wasn't the best choice. And I have been as transparent as I know to be.
And you've said it was allowed, too.
Yes, it was.
Who allowed it? Who?
It was allowed under the rules of the State Department. And again,
so nobody signed off on it?
No, it was allowed. One of my predecessors did the same thing. Others in our government have done the same thing at very high levels, because the rules did change after I left the State Department. But at the time and in prior years, the rules allowed it.
Well, as I have said many times, that was absolutely permitted, and I did it, and it turned out to be a mistake. It wasn't the best choice.
Well, Jim VandeHei, first of all, I mean, we said all along around this table that the State Department didn't allow this, because people inside the State Department, at the highest reaches of the State Department, saying she never asked anybody, this was never allowed. They kept saying it day in and day out, day in and day out. New York Times talks about, in this article, a candidate's negative controversy and the voters' fading trust. Here we have Donald Trump, who obviously on a lot of key issues changes with the wind, and is accused of not being honest and trustworthy. Right. You look at the poll numbers, his numbers are horrific, just as bad as Hillary Clinton's. And this is yet another nail in that coffin of voters' trust.
No doubt. I mean, even watch those clips. I don't even think people think she's telling the truth in those. She looks like she's trying to convince herself of it. And the report is, I think it is devastating in that she says on all those clips, it was authorized, it was okay, it's not a big deal. The report says, no, 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 you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And you have to step back and remember, this is her State Department. It's her State Department. She ran the State Department. It's the IG in her department that is making this determination. And so I do think you have two candidates who, 60% of people think are dishonest. And if you look at this week of the campaign, it shows you everything you need to know about the next 3 months. It's going to be gross.
So to
it's
your
going
point,
to be a battle of negativity.
The Clinton campaign has long maintained the server was never breached. But the report tells of one incident when an advisor shut it down out of concern that it was under attack. And the footnotes tell of an incident in 2011 where Secretary Clinton was concerned someone was, quote, hacking into her email after getting more than one email with a suspicious link. According to the report, security officials should be notified even when a personal device is feared compromised. But according to the report, they found no evidence that the secretary or her staff ever reported the incident.
And that, Donnie, this goes to national security, obviously. The biggest concern is national security. A lot of people act like, well, there's much ado about nothing here. Well, actually, there are a lot of classified documents, a lot of classified materials going through this server. And the great fear all along that a homebrewed server in Chappaqua, New York, was going to be broken into.
Not a knife to the heart, but a very deep flesh wound. Unfortunately for Hillary, this is right on brand. You know, in the advertising business, we have kind of a brand positioning state, and then we have brand support points. This is a brand support point. If her brand is untrustworthiness, this is one more pill in there. The interesting thing to think about is how would Donald Trump, this election is going to be, you call it gross, I'll call it counterpunching. How would Donald Trump have reacted if this had happened to him? He would be saying, you know, emails. You're kidding me, right? Me, Colin Powell, this is what we did. I made a mistake. Look at Hillary Clinton. She killed Vince Foster. I mean, that's what would be happening there. Hillary has no way of counterpunching. So the difference is, whereas Trump, no matter what you throw at him, he's got the counterpunch. No matter what you throw at Hillary, she never has a way of swatting it back. So it's not devastating, but in this election, if the game for the next 3 or 4 months is to make Trump seem more presidential and less temperamentally, you know, unstable, you can start to move that needle. But I don't know how you move the untrustworthy needle.
Here's a problem, though. Mike Barnicle, Trump, he lies about Trump's state success. He lies about the success of some of his business ventures. He flip-flops on issues where he was a reality show host when he took those positions. And it seems like it's, you know, down here. With Hillary Clinton, you have an honest and trustworthy issue involving classified emails, classified information, and 22 emails that the State Department itself said were so classified that sending them public would have a devastating impact on America's national security. That's, when we're talking about honest and trustworthy, I don't know that she can go Hulk Hogan and get down in the mud on an issue like this because the stakes are so much higher.
And we've just been talking about the top of this story, the headlines of this story, the lead of this story. Within the report, there's other devastating issues. The fact that she declined repeatedly the Inspector General's request for an interview when every other former secretary, Madeleine Albright, Colin Powell, John Kerry, Condoleezza Rice, all were interviewed by the Inspector General. It goes to that
bunker mentality, secrecy that led her to do this in the first place.
In June of 2011, the State Department, the Secretary of State, sent out a cable to all consular and diplomatic posts, urging them and commanding them basically to stop using home email for anything having to do with State Department business. And yet she did not follow that edict.
Right.
A cable under her name to every diplomatic and consular post in the world.
When she says it was allowed,
she never asked. She never asked for permission. The Inspector General stated she never asked for permission to use a personal email, and he added that if she had, the State Department would have declined permission.
What Trump is salivating at, he doesn't not only have lying Hillary, he's got incompetent Hillary. He's got dangerous Hillary. She's dangerous. She can't be the president. He has such an ability.
She's got entitled. He's got entitled.
He's got 10 new words for her. And it just, and by the time this is done, it will seem like, according to Trump, that she sent directly to Putin emails that she wasn't supposed to, and that's what he'll do.
You know, Joe, what this could really mean, I don't know how the public reacts to this, whether they just say, oh, you know, whatever, and turn the page and go to the sports page, but it adds to the weight of voter exhaustion when it comes to the Clintons, and that's a huge burden for her to carry.
I know, you know, a lot of her supporters, both politically and in magazines and in papers and on TV, have been saying, well, this isn't going to have a big impact. Al Hunt, this isn't going to have a big impact on Hillary's numbers. I mean, who cares about the emails? What we've always believed, and I think what we've seen, is that you go to the subset question of honest and trustworthy, that it has had a devastating impact on that. And let's remember, Hillary Clinton was a woman with an approval rating around 65, 66% when she left the State Department. Her numbers have plummeted, and in large part, I've got to believe, because the drip, drip, drip continues of this. And again, it's not from Breitbart, it's not from Drudge. This started with the New York Times, and here we have Hillary Clinton's own State Department issuing pretty devastating review of her use of these emails.
Yeah, Joe, I think this and the Wall Street speeches are responsible for taking her from a 60% approval down to a 30% approval. I think it really is serious, and it raises another question. What kind of people, what kind of advisors does she have? Why didn't someone say, I'm sorry, Madam Secretary, you cannot do this? She should not have done it, but she should have had people around her who, instead of saying that, were enablers. And that raises questions about who she surrounds herself with. I think it really hurts. I agree with everything that's been said. She broke the rules. That's really bad. The really big issue here is, did she break the law? And that will be determined in the next couple of weeks. If that should happen, which I actually suspect that they will rule she didn't, Joe, but I don't know. If that should happen, it would be lethal.
So let's just kind of go through some of the details here that are a little troubling and definitely conflict with what she has said before. The Clinton campaign released a statement which read in part this: the Inspector General's documents show just how consistent her email practices were with those of other secretaries and senior officials at the State Department.
Jim Vande Hei,
also use personal email.
You're shrugging right here.
Even that's not accurate.
It's pretty remarkable.
And nobody reading that thinks it's accurate. That's the problem. They keep digging a deeper hole.
Remember a couple weeks ago, Mika, where I said the remarkable thing about the Clintons during the 1990s were that I was on the Government Reform and Oversight Committee, they would bring people in like Bernie Nussbaum, who would lie to us. And you were there, Jim.
Yep.
I mean, in a lot of these hearings, the people on the podium would be laughing because they knew they were lying. Bernie Nussbaum basically would be smiling because he knew he was lying. Everybody in the crowd would be laughing because they knew they were lying. They would come tell fantastical tales that everybody knew was not true. And I sat there, I couldn't believe what I was watching, but it happened week in, Mika, and week out. Why? I don't understand why you put out a statement like that. Stop digging. Stop digging. I screwed up. I'm terribly sorry. I hope the American people will forgive me, and I hope they will let us move on to the issues that matter. Stop lying, stop digging.
So just for this, and then we'll get into some of the details, a spokesman for Bernie Sanders said, quote, "The IG report speaks for itself."
Did you know about Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server?
No.
While she was Secretary of State?
No.
Do you think it posed a national security problem?
I don't think it posed a national security problem. I think that it was a mistake that she's acknowledged. And, you know, as a general proposition, when we're in these offices, we have to be more sensitive and stay as far away from the line as possible when it comes to how we handle information, how we handle our own personal data. And, you know, she made a mistake. She's acknowledged it. I do think that the way it's been ginned up is in part because of politics. And I think she'd be the first to acknowledge that you know, maybe she could have handled the original decision better and the disclosures more quickly.
What was your reaction when you found out about it?
You know, this is one of those issues that I think is legitimate, but the fact that for the last 3 months this is all that's been spoken about is an indication that we're in presidential political season.
Do you agree with what President Clinton has said and Secretary Clinton has said, that this is not that big a deal? Do you agree with that?
Well, yeah, I'm not going to comment on...
you think it's not that big a deal?
What I think is that it is important for her to answer these questions to the satisfaction of the American public, and they can make their own judgment.